friends, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I couldn't be happier today to be joined by a longtime friend, personally and business-wise, but also a friend of the podcast, and that is
Yep.
Ellen Frost. Hey, Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
It's such a pleasure as we are kind of bracing for some really snowy weather around here.
Yep, we are too.
This is kind of nice to have a lot of great work to do inside, so it's just so great. Now, Ellen is a friend of the podcast. I'm sure that Jesse will drop the links in the show notes if you want to listen to previous episodes when we've talked about different subjects, because Ellen and I have known each other. Ellen, I was trying to think, it's like, is it 2 decades? I don't think it's quite 2 decades yet.
Close though. I bet it's 16 years.
So I actually stumbled upon Ellen speaking at an association, especially cut flower growers conference class. You know how they have breakouts where you can pick which class you go to? Well, I couldn't really find a class that fit for this hour. And I thought, oh, I'll just pop in here. And my life was changed literally because it opened my eyes to one of my main customers were florists, because that's what Ellen is. Ellen is a florist, design studio owner who only sources flowers that are grown within 100 miles. And that began our relationship. And I'm going to ask Ellen in just a moment to introduce herself. But if you are new here, if you've dropped in because you heard it was Ellen, or perhaps you're a florist or a farmer florist, this podcast is brought to you by thegardenersworkshop.com. That's what makes this all possible, and you are always invited. There's always an open door for you over there to come over and check out. We have tons of free resources and an online garden shop, as well as a fully stocked online library of online courses for everything from seed starting to a cutting garden, to starting a business, to expanding your business, and to even becoming what Ellen does, a florist.
Yes.
Locally sources, right? So Ellen, tell us a little bit about your story for anybody that doesn't know your journey.
Sure. My name's Ellen Frost. I am the owner of a business called Local Color Flowers. We are a floral design studio located in Baltimore, Maryland. We are in our 17th year of business. And ever since the beginning, from the very beginning, we have been sourcing our flowers locally. And we say that we try to source as close to home as possible. And for us right now, that's from within about 100 miles of our studio. So I do all the things that florists do, but I do them with local flowers. So we do retail, weddings, events, classes, subscriptions, corporate work, you name it, we do it. And we do it all with local flowers. And for folks who really want to do a deep dive on local flowers, I write a weekly newsletter about local flowers. I do weekly YouTube videos about local flowers. So really all in on the local flower front.
And tell us where you're located so they can understand that year-round local flowers. She's not living in Florida, y'all.
Nope, we're in Baltimore, Maryland, so centrally located inside the city. So we do have a little bit of a heat island, effect inside the city. But we're in, 7A, 7B, somewhere around there. Our growers range from about 6B to 7B, the growers that we buy from. So we buy from growers as far south from us is about like the Shenandoah Mountains in Virginia, and then up through about, a little south of Philadelphia, so into Pennsylvania. And so we have a good range of growers who are sort of in different growing ranges. But yeah, we're preparing for a blizzard too. So we are not in the tropical, warm weather location. We are here in Baltimore.
So Ellen, what I'd like for us to talk about today is, should a flower farmer consider selling to florists, right? And kind of what does that take? And I have come up with some questions here that I think will squash some of the question marks and maybe the fears that flower farmers have in their mind. So first, I want to say out of the gate, what are the benefits to a florist to work with local flower farmers?
Yeah, there are a ton of benefits. So first off, I would say for a florist, it's a way for you to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So, if you look at people's Instagrams, you look at websites, you look at Pinterest, a lot of the floral designs out in the world look exactly the same. Like they are not distinguishable between one another. So, for a florist who's sourcing locally, you are basically getting new and different flowers every single week throughout the year, which allows you to really set yourself apart as a florist who has unique product, has product that nobody's ever seen before, maybe has a product like a Lysianthus that people have seen before, but it's not this new double, or it's not the new
Right.
color, it's not the new ruffles. You have the ability to partner with local growers and get really the most unique flowers to set yourself apart in the marketplace. So for me, that's almost number one. Also, building farmer florist relationships can be really beneficial to a florist because you have different kinds of access to farmers than you would just at the wholesaler. So,
Right.
at the wholesaler, they've got thousands of customers. They are dealing with, thousands of farms, thousands of florists. You are one of a sort of one of many.
The
But when you're
herd.
working directly, yeah, when you're working directly with a farmer, you're having a one-on-one relationship. You have the ability to work with that farmer to really like customize the things that they're growing, that they're offering, that you can, really work closely together to access flowers when you need them that might not be available from the wholesaler. Like a lot of times, the wholesaler, if you order from a wholesaler, they deliver twice a week, they deliver, only early in the morning. You just might be in a situation where, you get a last minute order or something comes up for a wedding and you're like, oh, I really need this other color. You may be able to work with your very close relationship with a farmer to say, oh, could I run out to the farm later tonight and grab a few things? It really gives you a lot more flexibility, I think. And also, just in terms of thinking about sort of the bigger global market, there is a lot of uncertainty right now. And we've really seen that since COVID, right? There's been a lot of uncertainty about getting flowers shipped in, whether that is because during COVID, the borders were closed, whether it's because of weather related issues. A couple of years ago, we had an issue where there was a volcano going off in Iceland and European flowers were not being able to be flown out of Europe to the United States. So people's flower orders were just canceled for weeks. Now we're seeing, now we're dealing with the potential of tariffs. So there is a lot of uncertainty in shipping your flowers in, where if you're working with a local grower, you and that grower are in the same, your weather's the same, your community is the
Right.
same. You are not going to have the same level of uncertainty that you will, I think, with the global market. And so for me, I always feel more secure, being able to have these local growers that I can count on rather than buying from a wholesaler where it's sort of a nameless, faceless, maybe they'll
Right.
get here, maybe they won't kind of situation.
Instead of just getting an email in your inbox that says, whoops, the
Canceled.
flowers are coming from South America because of XYZ. So,
Totally.
Ellen, I also, does the quality of the product that you end up receiving, how does that
Yeah.
affect you as a florist? And it's really something that only local farmers can deliver, right?
Totally. The quality issue for us is, top notch because of course there are florists out there where the quality is not their top priority. And those are florists who are looking for a cheap product. They don't care about the quality. However, the majority of florists, especially florists who are doing weddings, are looking for the highest quality flowers. And there is no, in my mind, there is no comparison between the quality that you are getting from local growers to the majority of the flowers that you are buying from a wholesale market. Local growers, I always tell people when I say, "Oh, we buy from local farmers," I think a lot of people think like, "Oh, it's a tomato farmer that, grows
Right.
zinnias on the side."
Right.
I always have to say these are fully professional farmers who have spent their entire life growing these products. They are experts in their field,
Right.
and their level of quality is superb. It is, you are getting a longer lasting product. You are getting product harvested at the correct stage. To me, this is like one of my pet peeves, because at the wholesaler, they are harvesting so that those flowers can be shipped 5,000 miles without dying. So they are really harvesting in a closed, very tight
Right.
situation. Sometimes those flowers don't open because they've been harvested too early because of that shipping.
Right.
Our local growers can really harvest at the exact right time so that you are getting 100% open rate. You're getting perfectly, like perfectly timed crops that last much longer, because the amount of time that they went from the field to your vase, could be 24 hours, as opposed to flowers that are shipped where it could take 4, 5, 6 days to get to you.
And I think of that's such a great thing that you just said. That was one of my segues into there was this florist back early in my career that I was really romancing because I could see that he did an amazing amount of volume.
Hmm.
And he bought a lot. I mean, I would take my little order that he would place from me in the back of his shop, and it's like, holy cow, look at all these
Yeah.
flowers. Well, I could not get him to bite on sunflowers, because that was a big part of our
Right.
growing crop. And so I can remember the day, I mean, like it was yesterday, that I walked in the back door of that shop and there were just buckets and buckets and buckets and buckets of ugly, unopened sunflowers. And they were sitting around like 10 stems in a bucket. You can tell they were trying to do CPR, that they
Yes.
were trying to resurrect them. And so I said to the gal that was the buyer, I said, so what's going on here? And she said, we only normally accept sunflowers that are open from the wholesaler because 9 out of 10 times they never open beyond what you get. And so that like that next week is when, I mean, I didn't see the light before then. The next
Right.
I started putting like 3 to 5 bunches of my sunflowers as free samples. I mean, within probably 4 weeks, he bought 20 bunches a week from me.
What?
That's like, that's like not just the icing, that was the
Huge.
cherry, right? So, I mean,
Huge.
that's a really great point. Now, Ellen, how do you overcome any supply chain issues or availability issues
Hmm.
when stuff just happens?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. One is that we are working with the seasons. So we work with, like it's winter here. So we work with winter product and winter growers. And winter product can be, questionable sometimes because of the weather. So like we are 1 week past Valentine's Day. So, Valentine's Day, obviously huge floral holiday. We do have growers that grow locally in the winter. So tulip people that are harvesting tulips this time of year. But we also are really cognizant of thinking outside of the box and thinking, okay, what do our growers have? I'm not saying you have to grow, something special for me, although some people do, but more thinking, okay, what do you have available? Oh, you have quince, you have witch hazel, you've got willows, you have evergreens. Like we will get creative with local product that is available. So we're not, there's never a time where there's nothing available. There's always something. It's just a matter of how creative can we be. And also just being cognizant of like, I'm not going to take, I mean, this is the truth of sort of how our business works. I'm not going to take a giant white wedding today.
Right.
I know that those flowers are not available. We do not have access to that. So I'm going to sort of mold my business around what flowers are available. So I can do retail, I can do corporate stuff because that has more flexibility in color and style. And just as a side note, for Jenny and I were just talking about this the other day, for all of my contracts, we always have a backup clause that says, of course, we will buy from a wholesaler if we need to. Like if I commit to you, I'm going to bring 20 centerpieces and there's a blizzard and there's a hurricane, whatever. Of
Right.
course, I would buy at the wholesaler. I'm not going to not bring you flowers.
Right.
However, we have never in 17 years had to do that. We have never had a
Right.
situation where we did not have local product available in our region. And part of that is just the amount of relationships we have built over the years. We are working with probably 40 or more growers in our region. So we are trying to insulate ourselves from that risk as well. If we were only working with one grower, maybe there would be more risk. I would feel more nervous. But we have really tried to build enough relationships that if I can't get from you, I might be able to get from you. If I can't get from this co op, I can get from another co op.
Ellen, I just want to take a little rabbit hole right here. You just talking about that. This is really how you kind of encapsulate the theory, the philosophy of what you do. It doesn't just start with, oh my gosh, this is a hard week to get flowers. It's
Right.
like this is what your mission is, what your vision is. It's all built around people that come to you because of all of this.
Hmm.
And I remember back when you didn't have so many growers, where this is taking years to cultivate. And the
Years.
other thing that makes me think is that the florists that we see primarily buying from conventional methods where, they all have the same color peonies, they all have
Right.
the same everything. They've lost it's true. Whatever you accept and submerge yourself in is what you become. And all of a sudden, something that was not acceptable to you 3 years ago, all of a sudden
Mhm.
is. And losing
Totally.
your creativity because
Yeah.
you're working with the same old mess every day
Yes,
is one
exactly.
of those things.
Yep.
And
People always think that buying local means that we're constrained.
right, it's the opposite, right?
Did you know that the Gardener's Workshop offers online courses? Whether you're a gardener or a flower farmer, we cover it all, allowing you to increase your skills at your own pace. So check out our full list of courses today at thegardenersworkshop.com. The Gardener's Workshop, turning all thumbs green.
So a lot of people think that, sourcing locally and using only local flowers is a constraint on design, but actually it makes you more creative. It forces you to think outside of, like, florists who get the same two bunches of peonies, two bunches of gerbers, two bunches of roses, and you make the same recipe every week, every design. For us, every week we are being stretch to think about how do we incorporate these new ingredients every single week. So it actually is a much more creative process.
And exciting. Um,
So fun. Yeah, it's so fun.
and listening to you talk just takes me back. I can remember the first delivery every season into a flower shop, especially this is another. I had two really big shops that came to be regular customers. And that first week when I would walk in, typically with Lenten roses and poppies, when I
Mhm.
would walk in with the flowers, the whole team would break out. The real
Oh,
flowers
yeah.
are back. It's like they have been suffering all winter. So,
Yep.
Ellen, from the perspective of a florist, what does it take for a flower farmer to be a successful supplier? And
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you in a minute about, is there a difference between price structuring between local and the conventional? But what would you say would be the attributes?
Yeah. I think first off, for a successful farmer florist relationship, in my opinion, I think that the farmer needs to prioritize the florist over other outlets of sales. And I know that farmers are going to think that that is controversial. However, the florist sales, like, no, I will tell you that if you are like, oh, I have a farmer's market and I do a CSA and I have a farm stand, and then whatever's left over, I'm going to offer it to the florist. No florist is going to do that. And so when you say, oh, my sales to florists are no good, they won't buy from me, that is like one of the number one things that we see when we ask, are you prioritizing your florist over all other sales channels and offering them the first flowers of the week? People will say, no, I have to have these five other ways that I sell. Of course, everybody can't put all their eggs in one basket. I understand that. But I think the florist egg has to be the first egg, because that is the only way that a florist can trust that you're going to have the stuff that you think you're going to have.
Ellen, that is now, looking back is so useful, right? After you've done it
Mhm.
for so long. What people that I think that fall under that umbrella, what you're saying, they're like the
Mhm.
florist is just amongst the pack of people.
Yes.
And see, I have such a different perspective than most people
Mhm.
because what I figured out early on is I wanted to sell flowers to the people that use flowers every single day
Yes.
of their business life. And
Yes.
so our florist always got the cream. And not that there's anything wrong with the rest of the flowers, they just aren't
No.
necessarily the grade A flowers.
Yes.
And even because we hear people talking about, oh my gosh, but then you get into summer and your florist sales hit,
Tank.
below. But I'm telling you, as someone that did it for several years, when you become a major sourcer for a
Yes.
florist, even I mean, people are still, making their spouses mad. More importantly, people are still dying during the
Yes.
off season.
Yes.
And when you are their go-to supplier, I mean, we had as big, if not bigger orders in
Mhm.
July and August than we did during the spring and the fall. And
Yeah.
that was why. So you kind of reap what you sow is what I go with
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. So I would say that's like number one is really prioritizing your florist sales. Next, I think is the schedule for selling to florists is different than the schedule for doing a farmer's market. So farmer's markets on the weekend, you're maybe harvesting all week or you're doing other things during the week. Maybe you have a job, maybe you're doing your full-time job during the week. And then on Friday you harvest and then you go to market on Saturday. Florists are their schedule is flipped. So if you're a retail florist, you're looking for things at the beginning of the week, Monday, Tuesday, which means as a farmer, you have to be working Sunday, Monday to harvest and to deliver on Monday or Tuesday. If you're a wedding florist, you're usually looking for things by Wednesday, maybe Thursday at the latest, but really Wednesday, Thursday. So you're front loading a lot of the work and maybe you even have your weekends off. If you're, like off, if you're doing, nobody's ever off, but if you're only doing florist sales, a lot of our farmers who only do florist sales, by Friday at 10 a.m., they're done for,
Right.
the weekend until Sunday night or whenever they start harvesting again. So just the schedule, especially for people with families or people that have jobs, or, are you able to make the schedule work? So I think that is like a big question.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think also, quality, we talked about quality before, but I think there is a different level of quality needed for selling to florists. And as a farmer, I think you have to really commit to, obsessing about quality. And like you said, it's not that you're not bringing quality stems to the farmer's market or you're not putting quality stems in your CSA bouquet. But florists, we have to resell these flowers. If you're selling to an end user and they put them on their table and there's, one bad bloom or whatever, or it's too short, or that's not the end of the world. But for a florist, if we can't resell that because it's too short or it's damaged or something else, that's like money we just threw away. So you have to really obsess about quality if you're going to sell to florists.
I so agree with that, Ellen. And we kind of held that bar up for all of our flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And the one I was when I was teaching new workers here, and harvesting is one of the hardest jobs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like people aren't sure which ones to throw down and which ones to keep. And so
Yes.
one of the things that I would often say to folks, especially when they were cutting at the end of the week for our farmers market and
Hmm.
CSA bouquets, to say, when you harvest that zinnia, you've got a lot of knowledge now, but here's the seal in the deal. If you
Yeah.
came into my booth at the farmer's market, would you be willing to pay $1.50 for that zinnia?
Yes.
Look at it. If there's spots all over it, of
Yeah.
course you're not. And we
Right.
don't consider that a candidate for CSAs. For us, grade B is smaller blooms,
Yeah.
maybe not as long as stems,
But not damaged.
not damaged, not old, not worn.
Yes.
So, Ellen, talk little bit about just is there a difference between the pricing on local flowers versus sourcing conventionally?
Yeah. So this is always, I think, a question that farmers and florists have, because some consumers will assume, oh, local, it must be cheaper. And in some situations, that's true. Take maybe, it's just not all apples to apples. If you are saying, oh, there's local peonies in May when our region is flooded with peonies, people may be, charging $2 a stem for a peony, or, probably $2. Where if you are going to a wholesaler and you're like, I want peonies in December from Holland, they're going to be $20 a stem.
Right.
Right. So it's not apples to apples. But I would say for the most part, like flower to flower, most of our growers are trying to be in the same range as the wholesaler, so that we can't really, our local growers can't really compete on price, because the wholesaler is probably going to be cheaper in most of the cases. They're getting, they're buying in such huge volume, and they're buying such commodity flowers that, they're probably going to be cheaper, which puts us, at a little bit of a disadvantage, because we have to, both farmers and florists, farmers, have to convince florists, florists have to convince consumers that you are buying for quality, you're buying for interest, you're buying for variety, you're buying for the story of local flowers. This is not a commodity. My friend
Fair
Lauren,
wages,
who
the whole nine
grows,
yards, right?
right. My friend Lauren, who grows roses here in Baltimore, Floor by Eight, we both are always hammering away at the same message. The roses, the commodity roses that you get at the wholesaler, are a completely different product than garden roses that you buy from a local grower. You cannot compare them. They are not the same product. So, as much education as we can do around, if the price is higher, why is that price higher? What are you getting for a higher price? And farmers, especially if they're reaching out to conventional florists, especially budget minded florists, especially florists in today's day and age when, the economy is sort of, unstable, you are going to have to tell a story about why your flower might be more expensive. And that's not a hurdle you can't get over. It just, you have to go into it with your eyes wide open.
I think that's something that you do such a great job with in your course, growing your business with local sourcing flowers, because it's not just about learning how to work with farmers and
Yeah.
all of that. It's like you need to share the story. I mean, first and foremost, they're getting a better product. They're getting product
Yes.
that's not available through a wholesaler. But then to hear the story that you're supporting and keeping the money in the community, and you're
Hmm.
supporting people with fair wages, and that can all just be, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Talk about social
Right.
media potential, right?
And that florist, I mean, the thing that I think the farmers, while they may, I think we're seeing this, I'm feeling this more and more. While the farmer may be able to tell me the story, which is great, I know how I can use that story. They maybe aren't communicating to the florist, hey, this is going to give you a leg up.
Yeah.
You can use my story, put my face on those flowers, say that they came from my farm. Let's do a cross promotion where we both promote a local only bouquet. I think that the florist needs to hear that it's going to give them an advantage as well.
Well, they just don't
Um,
know, right? They
yeah,
just don't.
right.
It's like, yeah, I mean, we could go down such a rabbit hole on this, right? I mean, there's so many ways that you can partner,
Hmm.
and you just need to open that up. And again, what we previously mentioned, when florists are at the top of your food chain, which they were the meat and potatoes for us for
Yeah.
24 years, you know,
Hmm.
that when you work with them and invite them to, come and bring your crew and let's
Yes.
do some photo shooting out in the field,
It's
let's,
huge.
I mean, it's just a really, really big deal. So, you know, what advice would you give to flower farmers who are interested in expanding their sales?
Hmm.
First, I'm going to say it because I don't know if you will. Ellen and I have done two courses together. I'm just going to plug this in here.
Yeah.
The first one is your school, which was really aimed at helping people that wanted to kind of have that business model like you have of, being a designer, a
Yes.
florist basically, but only sourcing local flowers and you tell the whole story in there. But
Yeah.
for our flower farmers, they may not be aware that we had you do also a workshop about preparing to sell to florists. And I just
Yes.
think this is a great time to bring that in. Tell them what that workshop is all about.
Yeah, so we did a short course called Preparing to Sell to Florists, and it really looks at three things that if you are a farmer who is thinking about selling to a florist, this is going to take you step by step on how to make that first sale. And so the three things we go through are how to find the right florist partner. So, what research do you need to do to find the right florist partner? And this is so key because I think a lot of the frustration that the farmers feel when they gear up and they go to a florist and the florist is like, I don't want that. It's so crushing, right?
Exactly.
But a lot of that is because it's a mismatch in relationship. So you have sunflowers and you're going to pitch to a wedding florist who only uses white in every design. Okay,
Right.
well, they're never going to need your sunflowers no matter how great they are.
Right.
So we go through in the course how to do that research and how to really find the right partner for you. The next thing we do is we talk about pricing because pricing is a big issue. And then we talk about availability lists, which for me is a huge, huge selling point. If you're a farmer who really can create a good availability list that you can communicate to the florist what you have available, that is going to be a key in the sales process. So that short course goes through each of those pieces to really prepare you how to approach a florist when you're ready.
And, I'll just say, I believe it. I should have looked at this before I came on here, but I didn't. I think it's 49.95. It's 50 bucks.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
like four bunches of flowers.
Yeah.
So,
Right. And the
think
thing
of
is, it's
every,
only 2 hours, so you can do it in an afternoon. And we've had such great feedback from that class because I've had people say, I bought the class, I took the class, and within a week, I was out making the pitch.
and, I just, sometimes I talk about this a lot, but never enough.
Mhm.
Sometimes stuff is so simple that we just can't believe it's true.
Yeah.
And just finding the right customer,
Hmm.
meaning a good match with what you offer, is because I was the opposite of what you are.
Yeah.
I didn't target wedding people. I mean, it was people doing everyday stationary
Retail.
flowers. They could use any and everything that I grew, and that
Yeah.
really made that easy for me. And I stalked that out from the beginning, and that's what
Hmm.
led to my overnight success. Overnight, like in years. It looks
Right.
like overnight, right? But
Yeah.
it's not really. And so, how has this shift towards more local sourcing of sustainable flowers impacted your business and actually the whole industry as a whole?
It's really, for me, having seen, um, sort of where we started 17 years ago. And really, we started a few years before that because we were doing flowers just for friends. So, for almost 20 years, there were basically no florists in our region, in our state, that were sourcing local flowers. There were only a few flower farmers that were even willing to sell to me. So, even if there were farmers, they were not at all interested in selling to a florist. Today, I mean, just look at the local flowers, slow flower movement. There are florists everywhere in every community across the country that are prioritizing sourcing locally. And this is something that Deborah Prinzing and I talk about at Slow Flowers a lot. Is it is not florists who are like, I have to do what Ellen's doing 100% local.
Right.
It is florists who are saying, I'm going to prioritize buying locally during the season. And that is huge. That is a huge amount of sales. It's a huge amount of work, being given to local farmers. You just see it everywhere now. The other thing is that, when we started, we were basically explaining to every single customer why local flowers were different. Like
Yeah.
every single customer. Like our job was mostly education. And while we still do a lot of education, consumers are so much more educated. They are actually not just educated, but they care and they're asking for local product, which is a huge difference than we saw when we started. And
So
if
true.
there's ever a time to be doing local flowers, now is the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ellen, we'll wrap this up with, where do you see the trend heading? I know that when I approached you to do the big course, I felt like that was the future. I mean, that was our past, right? Which is
Yeah.
one of the things you teach in that
Yeah.
class is, it's like, this is what we used to do, y'all. And we thought it was such a great idea to start shipping flowers from South America,
Right.
and across the world. And, all kinds of can of worms can be opened up there.
Yeah.
But this coming back and it's not even just the neighborhood, although I would say if enough people grew flowers, it could be more. I mean, I just love
Sure.
hearing the stories about, like, Mima that's growing in a glass house that was part of a flower
In the
shop.
middle of the city.
Yeah, and we have one of those here, by the way, in our
Really?
city that has a glass house. They don't embrace this at all, but that's what it was in the past.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that there's just we haven't even scratched the
Oh, no.
surface. And
Mm-mm.
so, what do you see the trend as moving forward?
I think we're going to continue to see this movement being driven by small farmers and small florists. I think it has been slow, and I think it will continue to be slow to get maybe these larger luxury brands on board. But I think that you're going to see a really just a groundswell of small growers and small florists making this movement more than a trend. I think making it the future of the floral industry. And while we're never going to get rid of imports, I'm not even saying we should. I don't know. I mean, we're
Right.
not going to get rid of imports. But I think that there is a movement towards more sustainable, more thoughtful, more community oriented growing and sourcing. And I just think, it's across the country we're seeing it. And I see it continuing.
I totally agree with you. And I think, Dave Dowling and he's part of our trio,
Mhm.
our circle of friends. And Dave and I often say every flower farmer needs an Ellen. Ellen is a designer, business owner that only sources local flowers. Who better to learn from? I mean, that's like getting it straight from the horse's mouth. And I want to thank you for taking such great steps to help the other side of the fence. And I know it benefits you, but
Sure.
there's a lot of people that aren't doing that. It's a
Yeah.
lot of extra work. It's
Yes.
like, people just that are coming into the industry or into business. It's like they love all this access to information. And you, like me, I mean, I love to teach and I love to share,
Yeah.
but it is a lot of extra work and it's a lot of
Yep.
expense as well. And so I just want to say, when the time comes that you really want to get an education, to
Yeah.
consider. You'll find Ellen's courses over at thegardenersworkshop.com under our online courses. Just to consider, that's one way to not only get top-notch, firsthand, correct information every stinking time,
Yes.
but it supports the people that are working hard to try to bring it
Yep.
to you.
Absolutely.
So, Ellen, is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap up this amazing podcast?
Just always excited to be here. Always excited to, get to share the story of local flowers. It's the thing I'm most passionate about, and the thing I'll just keep telling the story about.
So, friends, gardenersworkshop.com, I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. Visit there. That is home base to everything that we do. And our mission, I was thinking about this morning when I was walking my dog. It's how that's a great thinking time for me.
Yeah.
What drives me is just to really help other people, no matter whether they want to grow a cutting garden for their kitchen
Mhm.
table or they want to start or scale a business. It's really to let people know that it's possible, because there's no
Yes.
more unlikely suspects than you and me.
Totally.
You were not a florist. You weren't
No.
a farmer. I was
Yeah.
barely a gardener. And to really just lay the tracks that people can jump on and follow, because it is an amazing ride. It's nothing's
Mhm.
easy. That's good. As my dad would say, if it's, nothing good is easy. Is it
Right.
worth it if it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, Ellen, thanks so much for joining us here today. And friends, until we meet again, ciao.